Vanakkam. Hello friends. In the previous episode, we saw about the early Chera rulers of the 6th and 7th generation, Kuttuvan Kodai and Seraman Yanek Katchai Mandaran Cheral Irumburai. In the 8th generation comes the Chera ruler Seraman Mari Vanko, also known as Ma Vanko, ruling between 150 and 175 Common Era as per the genealogy table of K.N. Sivarajapillai in his The Chronology of the Early Tamils. K.N.S. rules how that the rule of this king lies in absolute obscurity, with the only reference that helps place him in this generation coming from a single Purananuru poem sung by Avvaiyar. This Purananuru poem 367 actually sings the praise of Rajasuyam Veta Perunarkilli, and we have seen this in detail in a previous episode on this ruler. I will give the relevant link here. Avvaiyar registers her happiness in seeing the contemporary Chera and Pandya rulers Mavanko and Ukkara Peruvazhi seated together with Rajasuyam Veta Perunarkilli at his court. Nevertheless, she does not mention that they were there to witness any great royal sacrifice and only sings, "Ondru புரிந்து அடங்கிய இருபிறப்பாளர் முத்தி புரைய காந்தக இருந்த கொற்ற வெண்கொடை கொடித்தேர் வேந்தீர்." She compares the sight of the glorious three with their victorious flag seated together to the three sacrificial fires of the twice born Brahmins. So, if at all, these lines indicated how in those early times Brahmin priesthood had made proper entry into the Tamil kingdoms. In his book on Chera history, Seramannar Varalaru, Avai Duraisamy Pillai records how this king represented the Kadungo clan of the early Cheras and how he ruled from Kongu country, again elaborating on this same poem. So, with no additional information available about this king, we will now go on to another contemporaneous ruler whom KNS places in the same generation, Seraman Kokodai Marban, with a couple of Puram poems and an Agam poem sang in his praise that do not give much historical information. We can only surmise that this king, Kokodai Marban, also belonged to the Kodai clan. And we saw in the previous episode of how Avai Duraisamy Pillai had given interesting details about this clan, how they ruled over the regions of Kudanadu, wherein existed places such as Kodai Cheri and Kodai Kurichi, and even a river by the name Kodaiyaru that showed that these regions were under the domination of this clan. The Sangam poet Poihayar renders two Purananuru poems that show that this king ruled from the port city of Tondi, and in Purananuru 48 he sings, "Kodai Marbir Kodayanum, Kodayai Punarndor Kodayanum, Makali Malarnda Neidalanum, Kalnarumme Kanalam Tondi. Agdu em ஊரே அவன் எம் இறைவன்." Tondi, with its lush groves, where the fragrance of honey from the garlands worn by the king Kodai and his court ladies, and the water lilies blooming in the vast backwaters waft through the air. "That is my town, and he is my king," sings Poihayar. Even more beautiful is the Purananuru poem 49 on this king that goes, "Nadan enko, ஊரன் enko, பாடிமிழ் பனிக்கடற் சேர்ப்பன் என்கோ, யாங்கனம் மொழிகோ ஓங்குவாள் கோதையை, புனவர் தட்டை புடைப்பின் அயலது, இறங்கு கதிர் அலமரு கழனியும், பிறங்கு நீர் சேர்ப்பினும் புல் ஒருங்கு எழுமே." How will I describe him? King Kodai, with a tall sword, asks the poet and continues, "Is my king, lord of the mountainous regions of Kurunji, a Nadan, or is he to be the lord of the vast riparian fields of Marutham, a Ooran, or is he the lord of the seashore where waves roar on the cool ocean, Neidal, a Serpan?" Now these terms Nadan, Ooran and Serpan are codified in the Tolgapiyam as the names of the leaders in these particular landscapes, And Serpan has a very interesting origin in that the etymology comes from the Tamil word Serdal, which means joining or adjoining. So, the long stretch of land adjoining the ocean waters that go to form the land of Serpan. From the term Serpan comes Seral, Seralar, and Seranadu. In an Agananuru poem sung by Nakirar, a passing reference is made to this king. Here, Nakirar comes as an important linear link poet, having sung an Agananuru poem on his predecessor Kuttuvan Kodai as well. In Agananuru poem 346, the heroine's friend, the confidant, the Thori, chides the hero for staying outside in the house of a Parathai, a harlot, and she refuses entry into the heroine's house. The poem goes, "Nee nin pannamai nalyal pananodu visipini, mannar muழவின் கண் அதிர்ந்து இயம்ப, not coming to our house, on that day you went with your friends and your bard with his well-tuned lute to that splendid house of that woman, where drums with tightly tied skins and clay tops rode loudly, where you danced, you made the young woman with bangles very happy." So, how happy was she? Through her reply, Nakira records a veritable piece of history. "நெடுந்தேர் இழையணி யானை பழையன்மாறன் மாடமலி மருகின் கூடல் ஆங்கன் வெள்ளத்தானையோடு வேறுபுலத்து இருத்த கிள்ளி வளவன் நல்லமர் சாஆய் கடும்பரி புரவியோடு களிறுபலவவ்வி ஏதில் மன்னர் ஊர்கொள கோதை மார்பன் உவகையின் பெரிதே." Her joy was more than the joy felt by Chairman Kodai Marban when the Chola king Killivalavan entered with his flood-like army into the famed capital of Kudal of the Pandyas and destroyed the army of Parayan Maran. "This is a great joke to us. We do not care," finishes the Tholi. Now, we have seen in detail about the rule of the great Killivalavan. I will leave the link here as well. And perhaps Kokodai Marban was happy that Killivalavan had destroyed the Pandya Kudal, as it was the Pandya ruler who brought shame to the Chera line by defeating and imprisoning Mandaran Cheral Irumbore, his predecessor, at Talayalanganam, again, which we saw in the previous episode. While Avaiduraisamy Pillai does not mention Kokodai Marban in his book, he mentions two other Chera rulers, Seraman Vanjan and Seraman Palai Padiya Perungadungo, based on references from the Sangam works. Seraman Vanjan is shown as ruling from the beautiful Payal hills in the Purananuru poem 398, which begins, "Madinila Karappa Velli Erdara." The bright moonlight ended and Venus was rising. "பரிசிலர் வரையா விரைசை பந்தர் வரிசையை நிறுத்த வாய்மொழி வஞ்சன் நகைவர் குறியின் அல்லது பகைவர்க்கு புலீனம் அடிந்த கல் அலை போல துன்னல் போகிய பெரும்பெயர் மூதூர்." The ancient city of great fame, ruled by King Vanjan, where seated in his pavilion he bestows unending gifts to those who come to him in need. Into this famous ancient town, friends like me can enter easily, but for enemies, it is like a mountain cave where many tigers sleep. "மதிய தன்னை என் அரிக்குரல் தடாரி இருவரை நெடுவார் அரிப்ப வட்டித்து." I drummed my sharp-toned tadari, here tadari being a percussion instrument resembling the moon, knowing that I had come, he showed his joy and relieved me of the dirty torn clothes that I was wearing and gifted to me fine garments akin to the cotton dresses that he himself was wearing, புகை விரிந்தன்ன பொங்கு துயில், clothes that were as fine as the clouds. "வரையுறள் மார்பின் வையகம் விளக்கும் விரவுமணி ஒளிர்வரும் அரவு உரள் ஆரமொடு பறையிசை அருவி பாயல் கோவே." Wearing on his broad chest strands of pearls and precious gems that included the Aravu Ural Aram, a Nagamani, that he gifted to me, the lord of Payal mountains, where cascading waterfalls resounded like the Parai drums. Now, this repeated reference of poets to the sound of the waterfalls compared to the Parai drums are found only in the poems that sing the praise of the Chera kings, who ruled over the hilly terrains of the Western Ghats that were dotted with such waterfalls. Avaiduraisamy Pillai shows how the Payal Mountains is situated in the Wayanadu Hills and goes by the name Anjugundru. From Wayanadu in the north to the hills of Kodaikanal in the south must have been the territory under the rule of Seraman Vanjan, and its southernmost border should have been the Kannandevan Hills, he records. He also shows how this Vanjan Kundru in due course of time became Anjan Gundru, a Tiribu, and this Anjan Gundru became Anjanagiri when Sanskritization started, and Anjanam denoting a dark-hued blue color. This Anjanagiri was wrongly Sanskritized to Nilagiri. He also highlights the works of R.L. Rice, a British epigraphist and archaeologist, who has recorded in the Gazette of the Coorg regions of how, based upon research into inscriptions and archaeological evidence unearthed in these regions, it was very evident that the hills of Kodaikanal and Ooty had well-developed townships way before the advent of the British. Now, KNS2 in his work mentions Seraman Vanjan and Perungadungo. In addition, he gives the names of two more rulers, Cheraman Adan Avini and Seraman Kotambalathu Tunjiya Makode. The Chera ruler Adan Avini was the patron king of the Sangam poet Vorampokiyar, who has rendered 10 poems in his praise that form the first 10 of the 100 poems under the Maruthathinai that come under the compilation of Aingurunuru, one of the Pathupattu works. And each of these poems begins with the line Vali Adan, Vali Avini, from which scholars have opined that Adan should have been the name of the father and Avini should have been his son. Adan seemed to have been a very popular name, and we have seen about Adan Alisi, Adanungan, Adan Elini, as well as the early Chera ruler Adugotpattu Cheral Adan. The poems of Vorampokiyar, however, do not give any historical information on Adan Avini. Now, coming to Seraman Kotambalathu Tunjiya Makode, we come to know of him through a single poem rendered by the king himself in Purananuru, a heart-wrenching poem rendered in grief upon the death of his young wife, sung under Kayaranilai, the subdivision that denoted the loss of a loved one. The poem goes, Yangu peridayinum noyalavu enaithe உயிர் செகுக்கல்லா மதுகைத்து அண்மையின் கள்ளி போகிய களரியம் பரந்தலை வெள்ளிடை பொத்திய விளைவிறகு ஈமத்து ஒள் அழல் பள்ளிப்பாயல் சேர்த்தி ஞாங்கர் மாய்ந்தனள் மடந்தை இன்னும் வாழ்வள் என்னிதன் பண்பே. Even though it is intense, to what extent has this mental affliction of mine gone to? It does not have the strength to end my life. I still live even after my wife went to the upper world, and I saw her body being consigned to the bright red flame made by the dry wood of the Kalli Chedi in the open space of the cremation ground. Is this life? He asks. So, in a reversal of roles, we see a hero pining away the death of a loved one and how it had caused him great mental distress. Makode died at Kotambalam and earned the epithet Seraman Kotambalathu Tunjiya Makode. Kotambalam now goes by the name Ambulappuzha, and he could have been a minor ruler. Nevertheless, Keynes points out that how, due to the paucity of historical information, just as he had to leave out Koperencholan from the lineage of early Chola rulers, he had to leave all these 4 rulers from out of the genealogy table, and he also adds that if in future suitable evidence were unearthed, they could be re-evaluated and included in the proper generations. And indeed, evidence has been unearthed in the last few decades. For instance, silver coins issued by the Chera king Kuttuvan Kode with his portrait on one side, the other side being plain, have been unearthed from the riverbeds of the Amaravati river in Karur. These coins carry the Tamil Brahmi inscription Kuttuvan Kode and were probably copied from the portrait coins of the early Roman kings that were commemorative in nature and not used as a medium of exchange. More recently, in 2007, from the eastern desert regions of Egypt, in a place called Abu Khoraya, a square Chera coin was excavated. dated to between 100 and 200 Common Era, it helps establish that there was long distance sea trade happening from the shores of the Tamil country and authenticating history recorded in the Sangam works. The coin bears the image of a caparisoned elephant standing in profile facing right on a horizontal pedestal, and on the obverse, a strung bow and arrow pointing to the right, the Chera insignia of the bow and arrow that was known as Vangavil, and an elephant goat standard to its left. Coming to the famed Chera king, Perungadungo, he was a prolific Sangam poet. A very important evidence was unearthed a few decades ago, a rock inscription in a place called Puharur, the kind of evidence that KNS mentioned way back in his book in 1932. We will see more about him and the last of the Chera rulers, Kanaikal Irumburai, in the next episode. Vanakkam.